This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Dan, what's more important in leadership, vulnerability or strength?
Vulnerability is strength. Vulnerability is strength in the sense that I'm vulnerable to that which is wanted and needed from me based on what I say most important, the future I'm committed to. And so, in order to get there, it takes vulnerability. And in order to be vulnerable, I have to be clear about who I am and up for the challenges that are going to transform me. And it takes strength to be able to fail and get back up again. But that comes out of the willingness to be vulnerable first, right? And I discover new strength when I'm vulnerable to what matters to me. So, I mean, I had no idea how much I love my wife until, I was faced with. I'll never forget, these guys surrounded our car. My mother's driving. I'm in the front seat. My little brother, my sister, my wife are in the back seat. And these guys surrounded our car on this dark street in the middle of the night after a movie, and they were closing in. And my mother wouldn't step on the gas. I go, step on it because I'll hit them. I said, that's all right. They'll get out of the way. Right as I decide to jump out of the car to confront these guys, she steps on the gas, and I end up with my butt in the middle of three guys. And then I'm, scuffling with them, and the police break it up. They were there watching it, thank God. And I remember thinking, what did I just do? That was really crazy. But I realized the strength, courage that came out of me was a result of the values, the vision I had, the of what mattered to me the most. So I didn't even think about it. It just came out of me. I always say, people say, well, what would you do if someone? I don't know what I do, but if it's threatening my values, or something I really care about in the future, I'm probably going to move towards it and get vulnerable. And that brings the strength of, and that takes, like, there's my wife, my mother, my brother, and me in the car. So the fact that they could be hurt brought strength, vulnerability, and then strength to stand in that. And I'll never forget when the cop grabbed my arm after I actually kicked one of these guys pretty hard, and they started closing in on me. That guy went down, and there was a cop there, like bam, and I didn't realize the lights were on and everything. I didn't see him until he grabbed my arm and said, "I saw everything. Relax, we got this," and they let me go because they saw the whole thing. But I'll never forget thinking, "Wow, I never thought I would do that. I didn't know I had that in me."
Okay, so a little tangential here, Taylor, in the spirit of taking our time through this. Why is it, Dan, that I am so terrified of being vulnerable? Why am I so resistant to the call to be vulnerable as a leader?
Well, I mean, I know why I am. Look, human beings are dangerous. Let's get real. You're dangerous. I'm dangerous. We know how dangerous people are. We know. And they're not controllable, they're unpredictable. And so when I step out and speak what really matters to me, I'm putting at stake. Kierkegaard would say, to stand in the crowd is to face ridicule and slander and murder in the long run, even because if you stand up, you're gonna generate inspiration and envy, right? And inspiration. So let me just clarify that distinction. To be inspired is to inspire people is to people, like you watch a great athlete, you see somebody who's been crippled, and like I was watching this guy who did high jump at the Olympics with one leg, right? That's inspiring because they've overcome so much. Now, when you start doing that, you've seen it. We've seen all the movies and we've seen the stories where people like who are inspiring, who step out, get hammered, and people try to take them down. Right? In the Italian culture, my grandfather used to say they used the malocchio, the evil eye, and the idea was never to stand out too much because it's Jacob's jacket, right? You put the jacket on, you wear it. Well, you're probably going to provoke envy. Envy is distinct from jealousy. Jealousy is I want what you have, right? I want what you have, couldn't be very healthy. I want what you have and I can model you and get up to it. It can also be unhealthy. But when it gets really unhealthy, it transforms into envy, which is, I don't want you to have what you have. Right? So I want what you have is jealousy. I don't want you to have, and it's delusional. There's a guy named Helmut Schuch who wrote a book called Envy. And he said every culture he studied out of 180 cultures, some had a nomenclature for envy. And he supposed that envy is what generated man's need for law, because envy always ends in murder. In the scripture, it says it was for envy that they put him on the cross. They didn't want him to have the people's adoration. After they realized they couldn't harness him and they couldn't generate the same care and love from the people, they wanted to destroy him so he wouldn't have it. And that's an archetype for all of us. Aquinas says the most difficult sin to confess is envy, because if I if I'm gluttonous, you know what I get from it. If I'm slothful, you know what I get from it. If I'm covetous, you know what I get from it, right? But what do you get from envy, right? And that's why Aquinas said it's the most difficult sin, or missing the mark, that we as humans face. You can, it usually shows up. It starts in comparison. Not that there are healthy comparisons. I could say, hey, let's compete with each other. But if the comparison is not checked, if you that relationship of comparison is what generates envy, and divide and conquer. Well, hey, Brad, let me tell you, Brad, about Taylor. Did you know blah 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 blah? And you and I know that, but he doesn't. And let's not tell him about it. I don't want to make him feel insecure, right? So if the three of us are working together, I'm now dividing and conquering. It's a form of envy, because I'm using comparison to take the affections that he rightfully should have from you as much as I can away from him. And the nomenclature for envy is witchcraft. It's Jezebel with Ahab.
That's an incredible that's an incredible connection, and that very much resonates with me. I think this leads into the next paradox pretty well, and these are two new ones that we're trying. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the direction you took that in.